Hi, I'm Dr. Sharon Schutz, and I'm sitting here with two members of the hospital board, and they're here to answer some questions and discuss what's going on and what happened to the hospital, what the plans are, what they're working toward, and giving us some answers, because there's a lot of questions, and people are curious, and they're asking questions. And I want to introduce you first. This is Carlin Lewis and Marjorie Pulvino. Thank you. Okay, this is Carlin and Marjorie Pulvino, and they are here. Both of them are on the hospital board, and they're here to answer our questions and to explain some of the things going on and to tell us some of the things that built up to where we're at. Because Carlin was here the other day, and you were explaining to me some of this stuff, and it made sense when you explained it. I mean, and logically, so many times you don't always know what's going on, and if you don't know what's happening, then you just automatically assume the worst, or you automatically, you just don't know. And so by understanding and you walking us through what's going on with the hospital, maybe that'll help answer some questions and take some pressure off of you guys, because I know y'all get a lot of questions. We were at a excuse me. We were at a meeting, and County Judge Doug Page was there. One of the questions he was asked is, what's going on with the hospital, and why do we have to pay taxes? And you explained that and whatever, and wrote a page on it. And so we're going to discuss that today. But why don't you, first of all, Carlin, why don't you tell a little bit about yourself and tell people who you are and what you do?
I'm Carlin Lewis, and I have the privilege, really, of serving on our hospital district board. Have been on it for, I guess, 10 years. Margie and I serve on the executive committee. I serve as vice president. Randy, our president, was not able to be here today, and Margie is our secretary. Mm-hmm. And we have worked very hard as representatives, if you will, of our 9-member elected board. Mm-hmm. And I'd just like to say right now that every single member of that board is working as hard as they can to help us keep health care, in Trinity, and work to bring first the emergency room, and we hope eventually some hospital services back. So it's an effort. We're simply the representatives right now, but it is a united effort of the elected board of this hospital district. Now, the hospital district, that is a little bit misleading. It's the Trinity Memorial Hospital District. It was established when the hospital was here, and it was established to be able to raise taxes to help the hospital at that time. However, the charge is not just the hospital. When you read the documents that established it, there is language in there that does treat of the medical care, the health care of the citizens of the Trinity Memorial Hospital District, which, by the way, is not the whole county. It is what, Margie, about the southwest half, if you take the county and go this way. So it's not the entire county. And the charge that we have now, since the hospital is no longer being operated as a hospital, our charge is to do whatever we can to provide health care in this county until we can get the hospital district back, the hospital back. You asked the question, why a tax? Our tax is a little over 12 cents per $100 evaluation. $100,000 house, you have $120 for the year, or $10 a month for your taxes, to give you an idea of what it is. With that tax dollar, up until this past August 1st, we leased the hospital to ETMC. They ran and operated the hospital, the clinic, the emergency room, the labs, radiology, everything. They notified us 2015 that they would not be renewing the lease when it expired July 31st of 2017. We began immediately to try and find a replacement. We searched, we did everything we could. Well, I'd like to stop a minute and welcome our board president, Randy Carnes, who just walked in. He will not be on camera, but he will add to the conversation if needed. So with that, we were talking about why the tax. We are using this tax now to provide health care. I'll back up. When ETMC informed us that they could not come, would not be here past the end of the lease, we immediately started looking for someone to come in and take over our operations. We finally, after months of study, decided that the best fit was Huntsville Memorial Hospital. A lot of our people were being transported by ambulance there. Many of our people in this area used doctors there. It was a good fit. So we worked for almost a year with legal teams, looking at every aspect of the documents that needed to be signed. We were 2 weeks prior to their takeover. They had an administrator in place. Everything had been set up. Electronic record-keeping systems were set up. And we were notified they were supposed to take over November 1st of 2016, and we were notified 2 weeks prior to that they would not be able to come. That left us with a very short time now to decide how we were going to be able to continue, because now we had only from October 10th or so to the following July to find someone to continue health care for us.
You told me the other day when you were in here about how they told you that they weren't going to take the hospital or weren't going to work with you.
Well,
that it was kind of a...
We were taken aback. I think we would all agree. We went down for a meeting, Randy and Margie and I, thinking we were going to talk about some of the last-minute details before their takeover. So it was really a complete surprise.
Right.
And we asked, after sitting there for a few minutes, we said, well, are you telling us you're not going to come? And they said, we will not be able to come.
Right.
And it really was just a real kick. We just felt terrible.
What reason did they give?
Not really any reason.
They just didn't want to.
They implied that it was financial.
Yep.
They didn't think that they could financially handle it.
And that's a shame, too, because, like you said, Trinity, when we think of hospitals or we think of going to town beyond Trinity, it's Huntsville. I mean, now a lot of people go to Crockett and, some go to Livingston, but most people, it's, Huntsville's 22 minutes away, and you just, if someone in my family's going to the hospital, that's where they're going to go, because that's the closest and fastest place to get to.
And we thought it was a good fit. I mean, we really did think it was. As Margie said, financial, we had known that they were also talking about possible merger or working with someone else, another company, and we had asked several times, well, will we be included? Is that going to be a problem? But either that was a problem or it was financial. But whatever,
Right.
We really didn't get a good reason. It's just, no, we can't come.
Well, that's a shame.
Well, yeah, talk about a shame, because normally this kind of thing takes years, and now we were left with what? I didn't count the months, but October, November, December, we were left, about 7 or 8 months to
Right.
find someone to come in. And we were, I didn't say desperate, but we were, and we called, and we were lucky to find a wonderful consultant. Carl Hiddle of Endeavor came. We did more feasibility studies. It was clear that we could not run it ourselves. He did financial studies. Margie and I fussed all one weekend with him, saying, but we have this much money, couldn't we possibly make it? He told us we needed $3 million to operate it. We had about $2 million, and we started working. We said, well, if we could raise this much, if we could get a loan. And finally he got through our hard heads and said, well, yes, if you did, you could make it the first year, then what are you going to do the second year? You don't have the money. So we couldn't run and operate it ourselves.
Right.
So then we started looking to see who could take the clinic and the emergency room. And we went to every alphabet that you can think of. And finally, through prayer and luck is all I can say, what would we say, about 8 weeks before the actual deadline, CHI St. Luke's in Lufkin agreed to come and take one more look, and they said we can do the clinic, but we cannot at this time do the emergency room. So they came, and they said they've never done a transition that fast, ever. It normally takes at least 90 days, at least. And they were here in less than 6 weeks.
And normally, when they plan it, it's at least 6 months.
Well, I heard him say a couple of times, Dan, that comes to the meetings, I've heard him say a couple of times that even getting the doctors and whatever has been so much shorter than the normal time frame. Then it takes months and months, but A lot
Well,
shorter
the
here.
doctors have to be certified for the insurance companies and Medicare and Medicaid to
Right.
reimburse us through CHI. It couldn't be under the old ETMC. So all of this paperwork had to go through all these entities
Right.
in order for us to get reimbursed. And in fact, in the first couple of months, they didn't get those reimbursements because of the delay in the paperwork. So we're grateful that they were willing to take that risk and take that hit for that period of time.
And I think I told you what was amazing to us. The lead up to ETMC leaving was sad, as you might imagine. We had employees who weren't going to have jobs here anymore. It was a very, very difficult time. I think we can all say it was one of the roughest things we've been through. ETMC left the evening of July 31st. The CHI van arrived the morning of August 1st at 8 a.m. with their boxes of paper forms because they had no electronic things set up at all.
Right.
And one of our doctors, Dr. Deshpande, I'll never forget, they were meeting with the staff because we were able to save about 15 jobs, and then our providers, I believe, is about the way it was. And I'll never forget, they're explaining to everybody how we're going to use paper and how we're going to do this, and the phones aren't hooked up. And Dr. Deshpande said, well, can I start seeing patients? And they said, if you can see a patient this afternoon, go ahead. And he did. And we thought that was the spirit of Trinity, and that was the spirit of what we were going to do. I mean, it was we got teary. We were so excited. We really were. And they've worked hard, as you know, and you saw the other night. We're up to about 1,000 patients a month.
A month, yes.
Put in the front page of the paper a week. I said, we may get there, but it's really a month.
I saw that on the paperwork I was looking at earlier, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I wrote that myself. I wrote that week down. And
but we're going to get there.
yeah, that's positive thinking.
Well, we have the three providers now. We have Dr. Deshpande and Dr. Kwan and Crystal Smith, who is building her practice slowly.
Right.
She's a nurse practitioner. And Miles Cullen will be in, about the end of March, we hope, or middle March?
Middle to the end of March.
And he's
I met him the other night at the open house.
And he's so excited. He cannot wait. But they're having to wait, like Margie said, to get all his paperwork done.
Yeah.
So our tax dollar was used and is being used to support the startup of this clinic.
Okay, let's talk about the tax dollars for a minute. One of the things people are, it's okay, I'm having to pay taxes, there's no hospital, there's no emergency room, and we'll discuss emergency room in a few minutes because I really do want to discuss that. But what are some of the shutdown expenses? And because when I sat in a room and I heard $7,000 one month for an electric bill, I was like, what? And when you hear these things, if you don't know what's going on. I know that Connie Price was there for a while, and she was having to go in and operate the equipment to get the equipment going to keep it going. I know there's a shutdown procedure. Can you explain some of that and the expense of that?
I'm going to ask Margie to explain some of the shutdown procedure, but I'd like to just go over some of the general expenses first.
Okay.
And always has, are from some of the routine expenses, such as paying the appraisal district, paying for collection, paying for an auditor. Those are usual board expenses. Those have continued. But the whole new piece is the part that we're needing to insure and maintain this hospital building and all its precious equipment so that it will be ready immediately for startup when we get first the emergency room lab imaging back, and then some type of use for our hospital beds themselves. So the insurance, $32,000 to insure that building and all its equipment. Utilities, those are leveling out. That $7,000 that you heard, we're splitting that now. We came up with a deal with CHI. We're splitting all the utilities. So electric, gas, water. But so we paid it, but then they've reimbursed us half of that. So yes, they were horrible bills, but all of this is being trued up now as we're getting our bills straight between the two entities. So we're beginning to get a picture of what the utilities will be. But people don't think of that. If we didn't have AC in there, that building would go to mold. If we didn't exterminate, it would be a disaster. That equipment wouldn't be any good. We had to shut down the vent-a-hood in the kitchen, if you can believe it, in a special way. Now I'm going to turn it to our resident medical expert to talk about shutting down radiology and some of the other things that we had to do.
Well, first, before I get to the medical part of it, just some of the things that I was involved in with the shutting down. involved the changing of the telephone system.
Oh, gosh.
The telephone
remember that
system
discussion.
was something that ETMC had, and since they had both the hospital and the clinic, they had one system. The problem is that now we just have the clinic under CHI, and we still, as a board, need telephones to be able to work in the rest of the building. So we had to change that system. There was a cost involved of, actually it ended up being thousands of dollars to get that changed over to a new system where the phones could get answered in the clinic and everything they have handled, and that changeover to occur. We had to change the electrical system because prior to that there had been a meter come in. There were questions about splitting. How is it going to be split? How are we going to monitor all of that? We had to go through all of that. The same with all of the other utilities. It was an issue. The water system, the water meters had to be, everything had to be changed.
And security. We ended up paying, we had an installation cost for security cameras throughout the building and outside.
Right.
Excuse me.
We have cameras all around the outside that are monitored inside by the executive assistant to the board that is taking care of that, and it's all recorded so that we have security. Then you just don't turn off X-ray machines. Now CHI was not, they were not in a position to continue.
Can you hold just a moment?
Yes, wait for the train. The issue is if CHI was looking at radiology, but at that time it was not cost effective to continue running our radiology department for just the clinic. So you don't just turn off radiology machines. It has to be done in a certain way. And so there were costs involved with keeping them going until we came up with the appropriate way to have them all turned off, so that when the hospital or the ER reopens, we can get them back up and running again.
Right.
The laboratory, we had a fully functioning laboratory which is not being used. All of that equipment had to be put into mothballs, so to speak. So there was a lot of work with that. In addition, we had computers all over the building, all of this other medical equipment, all of which had to be inventoried and kept in the appropriate way. She mentioned in the kitchen, we had to have a special inspector come out to do the Vetahood to certify that it was okay to turn it off. There were all these expenses. I don't think any of us anticipated all of them.
And we had to make a budget for all of this in May, back when we thought Huntsville was still, Huntsville was, it was very, very difficult.
Right.
I would like to say, though, that the staff, you've met Billy, is our executive assistant, and he and Jackie have done anything and everything. But the kitchen, you just don't think of those things. When ETMC left, they just left it. So we went in, and there were canned goods, there were all kinds of things left. The first thing they did was collect all of that, and anything that was perishable, they immediately gave to, whether it was the senior center or wherever.
They gave to Loaves and
They
Fishes.
gave to Loaves and Fishes. So the first thing that happened was anything that could be done that way was taken care of and was donated and given to the community. But back to this tax dollar issue, people think we have, a huge amount. Our taxes raise maybe $680,000. if we get 92% collection. We're not a huge, rich district. So that money goes very quickly when you're using more than a third of it to support the clinic. Then you're trying to run your usual operations, and then you're trying to take care of all these other expenses just to keep everything functional. Now, when we get into the emergency room, we're working very hard to get a plan in place so that there's a logical sequence. We've asked CHI to help us with that. We don't have a plan yet, but we're working very hard on it. That money is going to be needed, and Margie can help explain better than I how much money is going to be needed. And the quotes that we got earlier when we tried to look at doing it ourselves, they were astronomical. Those quotes were higher than our entire tax. To run it for...
Well, the reason is that emergency rooms are a 24/7 operation.
Right.
And they have to be staffed at a certain level. You have to have physicians there 24/7.
Right.
They're very expensive. You have to have a registered nurse there as well as other nursing staff there. You have to have laboratory available and x-ray available. Well, the contract that we had for physicians, that ETMC had for physicians, they had a contractual relationship that spread across multiple facilities.
Right.
When we looked at getting a relationship with that company, we're just one facility, so the price went way up.
Right.
The cost was
It was $80,000 for just the doctors for 1 month.
Yeah.
Now you multiply 80,000 times 12 months, and you far exceed the tax base of this little,
Yeah.
the taxes that are raised by this little district.
In addition, there's so that cost is very high, and fortunately, that's why we're back here looking with CHI again. CHI is in more of the situation that ETMC was in. It's a very large corporation. They have much better contracts than we could ever negotiate on our own. So although we could not afford to do it on our own, CHI could do it for less money because their contracts are better.
Right.
So that's why we're negotiating with them. We also have spoken to other people because we're looking at any opportunity we can to get the emergency room. I'm a nurse. I was the director of nurses at this hospital 32 years ago. But I know how important it is to have that. I know that we're probably losing lives by not having it. So I am committed, along with everyone on our board, to getting it back. But in order to do that, we looked at everybody we could, and other people have looked at it as well, and there is an issue. It would be best if CHI were the people to come into the emergency room, because then it streamlines referrals and sending people out to other hospitals when necessary. So we're very hopeful at this point.
We're hopeful, but as Margie has said, and this has been our pattern from day one of this whole endeavor that we're in, we are looking at all options. I mean, if this one for some reason would not work, we're continuing to look. What we do not want to do, though, is go just urgent care, because ambulances cannot bring people to urgent care. So we really are committed to finding an emergency room. And I'd like also to give I guess this is not inappropriate, to give a plug for our ambulance service. Ventura has stepped up to the plate, and they are doing anything and everything they can. Now, as we talked earlier, we did keep the FAA license for the helipad, so they can be life flighted from that point. However, that's not an optimum thing. But Ventura really, they will stage an ambulance out here if one is being used, and they really overall have done all they can to fill this gap for us in the meantime. But they want us to have an emergency room as badly as we do.
Absolutely.
They really do.
And I agree with you. Ventura has done an amazing job. They've we've had personal experience with them, and they're doing a great job. I really, really appreciate them.
And I'd like to give a plug for the staff in our clinic. You know, it's not easy to change companies, but Brenda Goen, who is our coordinator for the lab, has been amazing.
Our administrator for the clinic.
For the clinic. She has been absolutely amazing in terms of keeping everything going. Because in those early times, I mean, all the staff might have been helping to clean up as well as admit. I mean, there was nothing they would not do to make sure that the doors were open and patients could be taken care of. So back to why a tax. Our tax is providing health care in this community. If that clinic were not there, those 1,000 patients a month would not be able to be seen right here. Many of them do not have transportation. They cannot go to the Huntsville or to the Livingstons, and this is their best place to come. They're not turning anybody away. If you want to become, I guess, a permanent member, you want to sign up for the doctor, the wait can be long. But if they're sick, they're taking them. They have walk-in days on Monday for the pediatrics group, all day Monday. And if someone's really sick, they will work them in.
Right. I have a question. Going to the emergency room. You're looking at different options. We know that you, excuse me. we know that you said that the tax base is about 12 cents per $100.
Tax rate.
Right, the tax rate. Okay. If and I know that you have no idea where it's going to wind up and end up, but what kind of increase of taxes would we be looking at were we to get a decent hospital, a decent system come in and help us?
We don't know. We just don't know yet. We can't get numbers. Until we can get numbers, we don't know. Our rollback is 8%, so we can go up a penny, which is about what we did this year. So we could go up a penny. We hope we don't have to go above that, but if we do, then we'd have to look at going above that rollback level.
Right.
But until we can actually sit down with the CHI and they can tell us this is the kind of support we would need for the first month or whatever. I would like to say we are looking at every avenue, though, to increase what we call the reimbursements, so that when patients are treated and then they apply for insurance from these various providers and from primarily Medicare and Medicaid, that the amount of money that comes in is much higher than it is now. So we're exploring all avenues to increase the income so that we don't have to raise that tax. But until we can have a plan, that's why we're pushing. We emailed again this week, can you please tell us when we can sit down and start looking at numbers? We've had a consultant say, as soon as you get numbers, we'll be glad. I'll come for free. I'll help you look at them and see if they, if we can help you make them any better. So until we can get that plan, those numbers, we don't know that answer. But we're telling them we've got to get them so we can go out to the community and tell the community what it looks like it's going to be.
Kind of catch-22.
It's where we've been.
The CHI has been very aggressive about finding ways to help us increase our reimbursements, even if it's something that actually would not directly benefit them. They are finding ways for us to help us get our reimbursement.
They have been a great partner, and I think, as I told you, we were pleased, all of us on our board, that the company that we're with is faith-based, a not-for-profit, it's a non-profit, and that they are pledged to serve any and all. And that is something that was really important to us.
That is true. There's a lot of hospitals now that are stepping in and going into these small towns, but they're not nonprofit and they don't feel obligated to help everyone. And it's good that they are.
This is in their mission statement. This is in what we call our community benefit agreement with them. This is a part of everything that we have here. So again, they are treating anyone who comes. They're trying to work them in.
Well, I know that we've been here 10 years, and several of my grandchildren have gone through that hospital. I have been in there many times with broken bones and various things, and we miss it. We really miss it, and we need that trauma. To me, it's a trauma center, because when you're going through something, you need to know that you can get in and get taken care of, and that they will stabilize you and get you to the next place.
Well, and this is a dream. Emergency room is something we have got to get, and we get emergency room and have doctors that can admit from emergency room, and we have doctors that can admit from a clinic. Then we can look at getting a few beds back, but we're as committed to getting some beds back as we can be, because we have elderly in this community, and if they get the flu or they get pneumonia, they can go into a hospital bed here and be cared for with the type of care they need, and not have to go to a Huntsville or a Lufkin where their elderly companion maybe has a hard time driving that distance. It just is so much better if we can keep some beds. But the first and driving need right now is that emergency room, and that's what our next big commitment is.
Well, thank you, ladies, for coming in, and thank you for coming in. And we'll get this out so people can kind of get an idea of what's going on with the hospital board and what's going on with the hospital, and the possibility of an ER coming back. And
you will be the first to know. You will be the first to know.
I'm sure I will. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you, Sharon.
Thank you.
Thank you.